Right, here's a nice question. You're wanting to graph a polynomial function. I know that polynomials that look like this, so where x is the first is a straight line. And then if you have x squared, it's like that. If you have x cubed, you have like this. So I want to know which of these graphs it looks like. So here I've got one factor of x. Here I've got two because there's a squared there. And here I have one. So altogether that's a quartic graph, an x to the fourth. So it's going to have that kind of shape to it. Now because it's negative, I also know that the shape is going to be upside down. The only thing I need to figure out now is where that thing crosses the x-axis. And to do that, you need a factored polynomial, which we have. So here I can use the zero property to solve for where the x intercepts. So I'm going to let this g of x polynomial equal 0. So 0 is equal to negative half times x plus 2 times x minus 3 times x minus 3 times x plus 1. So the zero property says if you've got some things that multiply together to give you 0, one of them has to be 0. So I could say from that zero property that negative 1/2 is equal to 0, because that's a factor, right? But I know that's a false statement, so I'm not even going to look at that one. Or x plus 2 is 0, x minus 3 is 0, I've got another x minus 3 that's 0, and an x plus 1 is 0. So for this one, I get an x-intercept of negative 2. Here I get 3 with a multiplicity of 2, because there's 2 of them, and I get negative 1. So to graph this polynomial, I would have an x of negative 2, an x of positive 3, and there's 2 of them. I'm just going to put a circle around that one because something happens there, and a negative 1. So I have to have a graph that goes like this, that goes through all of those points. Okay, now another thing that would be nice to know is what the y-intercept of the function is. To figure out the y-intercept of the function, usually it's that last constant term, but if it's factored already, it's sort of hard to get that constant term. But what you can do is plug a 0 in everywhere you see an x. I'm going to just do that. So I put a 0 in everywhere I see an x. So I would come up with, I'll just write it down here, negative 1/2 times 0 plus 2 is 2. 0 minus 3 is negative 3 squared, and 0 plus 1 is 1. So negative 3 squared would be 9, positive 9, times 2 times 1 times a negative 1/2. So 2 times 9 is 18. Half of 18 is 9, and it has to be negative. So my y-intercept is negative 9, somewhere down there. Okay, so let's try and do this graph. So it's going to come up through here, come down, and I'll have to go through that point, and then it'll come back up here, and there's a multiplicity of 2, so I just bounce at that point. Okay, so there would be my graph of that. You can also graph that in decimals. You just type that out and graph it, and you should get a graph that looks very similar to that.